Okay, guys, so this is lecture from section 1.2, quadratic equations. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to solve quadratic equation using quadratic formula. We'll do a little bit factoring. We'll use the square root method formula, and I will show you how to solve quadratic equation with complete square root method. So there's many ways you can solve quadratic equations. So first, let me give you the definition. A quadratic equation is equation equivalent to one of the form. Excuse me. Okay, ax to a second power, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a, excuse me, a, b, c are real numbers, are coefficients, which are real numbers. And a can't be equal to 0. Okay, so that's the definition of quadratic equation. And let's focus about solving equations, quadratic equation using quadratic formula. Using quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. So if you're not fan of factoring, this is your best friend. Quadratic formula is x equal negative b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac and everything divided by 2a. Okay. Now the quantity b squared minus 4ac, which is the expression under square root, is called the discriminant. The discriminant. This is very important because the discriminant will tell you how many solutions we have when we're solving quadratic equation. So this is very important. 1. If discriminant, which is b squared minus 4ac, it's greater than 0. If you have number greater than 0, there are two unequal, which is unique, real solutions. Okay. Why? Because under square root b squared minus 4ac, you see that's the expression under square root, and expression under square root, you can only solve it when it's equal to 0 or greater than 0. Now, second, if the discriminant, which is expression b squared minus 4ac, equal to 0, there is a repeated solution, which we call sometimes double root. So then when you're solving the equation, you end up with, let's say, x equal 5 and x equal 5. We call that repeated solution double root. Okay? And 3, if the discriminant b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, let's say negative 4, there is no real solution. When I'm talking about real solution, that's the solution which you can see and you can graph it in a real number system, because we also know that there is imaginary numbers, okay? We'll talk about that later. There is no real solution. Okay, so what we're going to do, let's just do a couple examples and let's just review how to solve quadratic equation with quadratic formula. Okay. So the first one, which I want to solve it, it's 2x squared minus 5x equal negative 3. Okay. So to solve it with quadratic equation, first, make sure that we have 0 on the right side. On the right side of the equation. So here I'm not ready to apply the quadratic formula because I have negative 3. So that means we need to move that negative 3 to the left side. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So we're adding 3 to both sides. Okay, hope you guys don't mind that I'll put it like this, plus 3. And that will give us 2x squared minus 5x plus 3 equals 0. Now, when we have equation like this, we're ready to apply quadratic formula. So now we're ready to apply quadratic formula. So to apply the quadratic formula, first we need to figure out what is a, what is b, and what is c. A, it's a coefficient which is in front of x to a second power. So a is equal to. B is the coefficient which is in front of x. So like you see, b is equal to negative 5. You take the number and operation in front of it. C, it's always the number which stands by itself. So it's positive 3. Okay, so this is C. Okay, so now when we know what is A, B, and C, I'm ready to apply the quadratic formula. Let me rewrite. X is equal to negative b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac divided by 2 times a. Okay, so x equal negative b. So like you guys see, I copy that negative right here, and my b is negative 5 plus and minus square root b squared. So b, it's negative 5. So when your b it's negative, make sure you put that in a parenthesis. B squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is 3. And everything has to be divided by 2a, which means 2 times, and a is equal to. Okay, so do it slowly. First, what you need to do, simplify the discriminant. The discriminant, again, it's the expression under square root. Do this one first. So, oops. Let me just check if I'm still recording. Yeah, okay. So the discriminant, let me simplify that. So I have -5 to a second power, right? That's what we have. Minus 4 times 2 times 3. Let me simplify that. So that will give me 25. 4 times 2, it's 8 times 3, 24. 25 minus 24, we got 1. So from the discriminant, you're having 1. So going back here, since my discriminant is greater than 0, so I know that we should end up with 2 solutions. Okay, so this is our first part. Your discriminant is greater than 0. Okay, so we will have 2 real solutions. We will have 2 real solutions. Okay, so let me go back. So we have x equal negative of -5. So 2 negatives gives you positive. So we have 5 plus minus square root. And the discriminant, the expression under square root, right here, this is what we simplify. We end up with 1. So I have square root of 1 and everything over 4. So x equal 5 plus minus square root of 1, it's 1. Divide by 4. So plus minus means that you have 2 solutions. The first solution, you're going to add it, the numbers in numerators. So we have 5 plus 1 and everything divided by 4. And the second solution will be 5 minus 1 and everything divided by 4. So we end up with 6 over 4, which is the same as divide each by 2 as 3 halves. Here we end up with 4 over 4, which is 1. So we have 2 unique solutions. And you can write down that the solution set is, and I'm just going to list them, 1 and 3 halves. Okay, and I will do one more with you guys. Example when we have fraction. So let's do B. Just show you what you can do when you see fractions as coefficients. So you have 3 over 4 x squared minus 1 over 4x minus half equals 0. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, since you guys have fractions, I'm going to apply the same steps which we did when we solved linear equations. I really don't like to have coefficients as fractions. So what you can do, first, find the LCM. Lowest comma multiple of the number which you see on the bottom of fraction, which is 4 and 2. So lower common multiple 4 and 2, number which can divide 4 and 2, it's 4. So LCM is equal 4. So second, multiply both sides of the equation by 4. Okay, so we have 4 times, and I copy my left side of the equation. So I copy this one. Okay. Paste. Okay, let's just move it. So we have 4 times. Okay, you guys can see it. Left side of the equation equal 4 times the right side of the equation. On the right side, you only have a 0. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, I'm going to distribute 4 to each. So you have 4 times 3 over 4x squared minus 4 times 1 over 4. So you only multiply numerator by 4 minus 4 times 1 over 2 is equal 4 times 0, which is 0. And 4 cancel, so we end up with 3x squared. 4 cancel minus 1. I'm sorry, I forgot to put x. Minus 1x. 4 divided by 2 will give you 2. 2 times 1, it's 2. Minus 2 equals 0. So now you have equivalent equations, so you don't need to worry about your coefficient being fraction. So now we're ready to apply quadratic formula. Okay, so we need to figure out what is A. A, it's the coefficient in front of x squared, which is 3. B, it's a coefficient which you see in front of x, which is -1. C, it's always number which stands alone, which is -2. Okay, and now I copy the quadratic formula x equal -b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac, everything divided by 2a, and I'm going to substitute the numbers into quadratic formula. So negative b is equal to -1, so -1 plus minus square root b squared. So we have -1 to a second power minus 4 times a times c, which will be times 3 times -2. And everything, don't forget that you need to divide by 2 times a, 2 times 3. Okay, so let's simplify. So like I mentioned before, guys, the first thing what you want to do, you want to simplify that discriminant, okay? So the discriminant, I'm going to show work here. Let's simplify that. So we have -1 to a second power, which will give you 1. -4 times 3 times -2, so this is positive. 4 times 3, it's 12, times 2, 24. So we end up with 25. Okay, so discriminant, it's positive, so we'll end up with 2 solutions. So now I'm going to simplify. Here, negative of -1, it's just positive 1. So we have x equal 1 plus minus square root of 25 over 6. So this is equal 1 plus minus square root of 25. It's 5 over 6. And now I'm going to create 2 solutions. Okay. So we have x equal, first I'm going to add it. So I have 1 plus 5 over 6, which is equal 6 over 6, that's 1. This is our first solution. And the second solution, I'm going to subtract numerator in numbers in numerator. So I have 1 minus 5 over 6. We end up with -4 over 6. You always simplify the fraction, so both of them can be divided by 2. So we end up with -2 over 3. And this is our second solution. Okay, so the solution set is -2 over 3 and 1. You can solve every single quadratic equation with quadratic formula. Some students don't like it, they're saying it takes too long, but it always works if you, some students don't like factoring. On the test, I'm reviewing the 3 major ways how to solve quadratic equations. On the test, it's up to you how you want to solve this quadratic equation. What does matter for me that you have correct solution. So on my MATLAB homework, they will ask you to practice different methods of solving quadratic formula. I'm sorry, but I use my Polish. But on the test, what matters is that you guys solve them correctly. And you can use any method you wanted. Okay, next one, what I want to show you guys. So I want to show you how to solve the quadratic equation using AC method, which is factoring. By factoring, and there is many ways how you can solve it. I'm going to use AC method in this class. I don't know, in New Jersey when I teach we call that barrel method, but I think AC method is more popular. Okay, so I want to review that. And I'm going to explain how to do it based on the examples, because I'm pretty sure that many of you saw that already. Example. Let's do, so solving quadratic equations using factoring. I always tell my students that's what you learn, what works for you, you never ever want to change it, okay? So if you factor in a different way than I'm showing you, go ahead, keep doing. In this class, I'm just factoring one way, I'm using only one method, so we're not confusing anybody. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We have x times x minus 8 plus 12 equals 0. So here, what we need to do first, we need to distribute. You have to remove those parentheses. So we multiply x by x, that give you x squared. You multiply x by negative 8, that will give you negative 8x plus 12 equals 0. And now I'm going to explain AC method, okay? So you still want to label what is A. A is a coefficient in front of x squared, which is 1. You still need to know what is B. B is a coefficient in front of x, which will be negative 8. And you still want to label what is C. C, it's a number which stands by itself, which will be positive 12. Okay, so step number 1 for AC method. Multiply A times C. So in our case, we have 1 times 12, we're getting 12. Okay, so this is A times C. Step 2, find two integers which product equal to AC and sum equal to B, to coefficient B. So what that means, A times C, it's equal to 12, right? So I'm looking for two integers, which by multiplication gives me 12, and exactly the same integers by addition has to give me B. B in our case is equal to negative 8. So we need to check what's going to work. Okay, I definitely 6 and 2 will work. Negative 6 and negative 2. Negative 6 times negative 2 will give you positive 12. Again, don't forget that 12, it's that AC. That's AC. Now, when you add negative 6 to negative 2, you end up with negative 8. So we find those two integers. Step 3. Create two factors that way. AX plus first integer times AX plus second integer. Okay, so in our case will be A was equal 1, so we have 1x, right? A was equal 1, yeah. 1x plus the first integer which we find, which was negative 6, times ax, which is 1x plus second integer, which was negative 2. Okay, and now this is not, okay? We'll see examples like that. If A is not equal to 1, you need to factor out greatest common factor, GCF. And we'll see the examples. And ignore it. I will show you the examples like that. We'll go back. Step 4, solve two equations. So again, you're solving two equations. Ax plus first integer equals 0. And the second equation will be ax plus second integer equals 0. Okay, so in our case, we have 1x plus negative 6 equals 0. And the second equation is 1x plus negative 2 equals 0. And I'm solving them. So this is just x minus 6 equals 0. This is x minus 2 equals 0. So we end up with x equals 6, x equals 2. And we have it. Two solutions. So the solution set is 2, 6. Okay. So this is a C method. That's the steps which I'm going to apply to solve it. And I want to solve the example when A it's not equal to 1. So you guys can see what I mean by using this note. Okay. So let's do more. B. So we have 2x squared minus 5x minus 3 equals 0. So here we're ready to factor since there is a 0 on the right side. So again, A it's equal to, B it's equal negative 5, C it's equal negative 3. So step 1, again, step 1, you have to multiply A times C. So we're getting 2 times negative 3, we're getting negative 6. Step 2, I need to find two integers, which by multiplication will give me negative 6, and exactly two integers by addition has to give you b, which is negative 5. So again, don't forget that this is b and this is ac. So let's see what's going to work. 6 and negative 1 will work. 6 times negative 1, it's negative 6. I'm sorry, not 6, negative 1. Negative 6 and positive 1 will work. So negative 6 plus 1 will give us negative 5. So now I'm ready to move to step 3. Step 3, we're creating two parentheses, ax plus first integer times ax plus second integer. So in our case, again, don't forget that in our example, a is equal to. So we're going to have 2x plus first integer, which was negative 6, times 2x plus second integer, which is 1. So now this is what you need to do. Okay, let's just simplify that. This is the same as 2x minus 6 times 2x plus 1. Since, and here you need to be careful, okay? Since a it's not equal to 1, you need to factor greatest common factor if we have one. Okay, so 2x minus 6. Okay, let's talk about 2x minus 6. Here, the greatest common factor, which means the number which can divide 2 and 6, will be 2. Greatest common factor will be 2. So I'm going to factor 2 out, and we'll end up with x minus 3. Okay, and what you're doing with that GCF, you're just ignoring that. Okay, so you're just ignoring that. Now you're going to do the same thing with the second factor. So you have 2x plus 1. Now GCF of 2 and 1, it's just 1. So when GCF is equal 1, just keep it. Keep it original. So that will just stay as 2x plus 1. Okay, so now we're going to replace, and this is again, get used of that, you're going to replace this parenthesis with x minus 3 because we need to ignore that GCF. Okay, so GCF, we ignore it. And this is the algorithm, okay? Ignore it. Okay, so we end up with x minus 3 times, and the second parenthesis stays the same because GCF is 1. Okay, so we just keep the original 2x plus 1. Make that equal 0 and solve two equations. So we have x minus 3 equals 0 and 2x plus 1 equals 0. We're adding 3. So we end up with x equals 3. Here we're subtracting 1. So we have 2x equal negative 1, and we divide each by 2. So we end up with x equal negative 1/2. So we have two solutions. Is negative 1/2 and 3. Okay. Not sure because I don't have you guys face to face if that's enough examples for you with factoring. I will say yes for now because I need to show you also square root method. Okay. There's one with fractions. Okay. Okay, I think we'll just move on to square root method. And if you guys have any struggles, any problems when you're solving homework, let me know. Square root method. So square root method, also it's good to know how to solve it. And I'm going to give you steps to solve quadratic equations. Using square root method. Okay. Okay, so step 1. Transform the equation so that A perfect square is on one side, usually in my case on the left, and a constant is on the other side of the equation. Okay. Second, use the square root property to find the square root of each side. Okay, so what that means, square root property? That means, let's say, when you have square root of 4, okay? So you know that you're always going to have positive and negative solutions. Square root of 4, it's 2, but also square root of 4, you need to remember that it's negative 2, okay? So remember, you have positive and negative solution. Okay, we're going to see that. Okay. Next, 3. I use red. Solve each resulting equation. Okay, note, if you are finding the square root of negative number, let's just put that, then there is no solution. Of course, you cannot take the square root of negative. Okay, so now let's do some examples solving quadratic equations. So examples. Using square root method. Okay, so let's start easy. I have x squared minus 16 equal 0. So first of all, when you're going to use the square root method, use the square root method. Let me write this down. Use it when you don't have x in quadratic equation. Okay, so like here, look what happened. This is quadratic equation. We all know the quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Like you see, if this part is missing, it's a good idea to use the square root method, which means missing. It's technically 0. Okay, so what we're going to do, step 1, move negative 16 to the right side. So what we're going to do, we're going to add 16 to both sides, and we'll end up with x squared is equal to 16. And now what you're going to do, you're going to take the square root of both sides. So we're going to take the square root of both sides, and square root of x squared is just x. So we have x equal square root of 16, which we all know is 4, but also x equal negative 4, because square root of 16 is also negative 4. So we end up with two solutions. Okay, let's do something more advanced. X plus 1 square equal 49. So here, I not recommended to distribute that. I not recommended to FOIL x plus 1 times x plus 1. What you can do, you can apply square root method. Also, how you going to know it's a good idea to use square root method? You have a perfect square on the right side. 7 to a second power is 49. So you can just take the square root of both sides. Okay, you can take the square root of both sides. So look what happens, square root of x plus 1 to a second power. So technically the second power and square root, they undo each other. So you will end up only with x plus 1. And the square root of 49, it's positive and negative 7. So now just solve two equations. X plus 1 equals 7. And x plus 1 equals negative 7. So we subtract 1 from both sides and you end up with x equals 6. Here also we subtract 1 from both sides, we end up with x equals negative 8. So we have two solutions, and like you see, it's worth it to solve it with square root method if you can, because you're quickly getting that solution. So the solution set is negative 8 comma 6. Okay. And next one more. X minus 3 square equal negative 28. Okay, so here again, what we're doing, we're solving quadratic equation in a real number system. In the real number system. Okay, so I want to make sure that we focusing on the real number system. So we're not talking about imaginary numbers. So here, if you will try to take the square root of both sides, okay, so we will end up here with x minus 3 equals square root of negative 28. And you guys should know that this one has no solution, has no real solution. Because the number under square root of negative 28 is undefined. Your calculator will give you error, and the number under square root always has to be zero. Okay, so that's that condition. We will not have a negative. Okay, the expression under square root. Okay, so next, guys, solving quadratic equations. Another method is by completing the square. I will be honest with you. I'm going to skip complete the square right now because we will need to learn it. Students are not fan of it, but we will learn complete square root method when we'll be dealing with circles. So at this moment, completing the square, I will teach with circles because we will need to know that for circles. So at this moment, I'm going to skip it. If in your homework they will ask you to solve quadratic equations using complete square root method, don't worry about it. Solve it either with quadratic formula or solve it either using AC method, which is factoring. Okay, what matters that you will enter your answer correctly in my MATLAB, and the same thing on a test. During the test, I'm not going to ask you to solve anything with complete the square root method. Again, it's not like I'm skipping. We need to know that for circles, that's technically why we're learning that. So I know that I will be teaching you circle soon in the future. So I will just say that for circles. Okay, so that's it from section 1.2. And again, if you see on the homework problems with complete square root method, just solve the quadratic equation using quadratic formula or factoring if it's possible. Okay, thank you guys for watching.